Welcome everybody to our live stream. Glad to have you joining us. And we call it the live stream because we really are live. And we're coming to you from the Huckabee Theater in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, where we do the Huckabee Show every week on TBN. Senior producer for the show, Pam Case, joins me as she does every Friday. What we do here is we take your questions, and you can send them in the chat. You can also send a super chat for a little more visibility. We got moderators who are watching the chat to get your questions and give them to us. Now, before we get underway with kind of looking at some fun videos of the week, we always like to ask you, please subscribe to the channel so you'll know when we're doing something like this. If you hit the notification bell, we'll let you know. And we welcome your comments. Good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter. We like to hear from you. Be sure to like the page and share it with other people. And if you're going to share it, right now is the best time because we're just getting started. So if you share and they're sitting around somewhere with their feet propped up, drinking a cup of tea with nothing else to do, they'll join us right now for the live chat and be a part of it. We got a lot of topics we're going to be dealing with today. We'll look at when Nancy Pelosi decides that she's going to give the boots of the communist Chinese a tongue bath. That's going to be fun looking at those videos. The Democrats vote for more government. That's just what we need. And even more government oppression of American citizens as they raise our taxes and send IRS agents to check on us. And of course, big story of the week we'll talk about, the Mar-a-Lago raid by the FBI. Each week we pick out a comment from the previous week that we thought was just sort of the cool comment of the week. This week it comes from True Patriots who said, and I quote, "Who passes a bill that sends 87,000 IRS agents after its people? This is madness." Great quote. And yes, it is madness. And Pam and I were talking just a moment ago that, you know what makes this worse is that in the application for these 87,000 agents, one of the questions, are you either licensed or capable of being licensed? I guess if you're a convicted felon, don't apply. You have to be willing and able to carry a gun, and you also have to agree to be willing to use lethal force. I mean, I'm thinking, okay, no, are we hiring 87,000 auditors or 87,000 highly armed cops with the authority to go shoot people if they cheated on their taxes by $15?
Yeah, that's a big difference in carrying a calculator.
No kidding. You know, it's one thing to come at me with your pencil, but to come at me, you know, with a Glock 40,
yeah,
that's a little much for an IRS agent.
Sense.
I'm just stunned. Why is that a part of it? Anyway, I've got a question for you this week. We'd love for you to weigh in. Put it there in the chat session. Here's the question. Was an armed raid of Trump's home with over 30 federal agents an act of even-handed justice, as was touted by Attorney General Merrick Garland? That's the question. Leave your answers in the chat and in the comments section below. We'll be able to get to some of them even before we get off of our live stream today, and we'll be looking at them after we're off the air as well. I want to jump into this week's videos because these are sometimes the most fun as we look at things that actually happen. I could tell you what happened, but if I just show it to you, you know, Confucius, who was Chinese before there was the Chinese Communist Party, Confucius said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I'm going to spare you several thousand words by showing you Joe Biden in action. This is Joe Biden shaking hands with Chuck Schumer and then seeming to forget that he shook hands with Chuck Schumer and acting like he wanted to do it again, but nobody was there to shake his hand. Watch.
Now our great speaker, our partner, who all of these bills we've met.
I mean, this is about the fourth time Joe has had this ghost handshake. I'm convinced he sees people nobody else sees. I think he's like Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense. I see dead people. Remember that line?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm wondering, is Joe seeing dead people out there?
Seeing something.
Because he's always shaking hands with the ghost. It's like, What's up with that?
I don't know.
Well, as you know, President Biden has some real challenges sometimes saying what he means or meaning what he says or even saying anything that we can understand. An example is when he wants to try to explain to us what this bill they just passed, the Biden inflation bill, and what it's going to really do. Here's his explanation.
What we're doing today, we passed yesterday, helping take care of everything from health care to God knows what else.
You know, the first part of that, he was just mumbling. It was total mush, couldn't understand it. Then he says, and this bill's going to take care of all sorts of things, health care and God knows what. That's what we worry about. Only God knows what's in this bill because none of them read it. They just voted for it because they were supposed to. And that is pretty frightening. But it's not the only thing that happened this week. This one is Joe Biden going to Kentucky, which was a good thing, talking to the people who've been affected by the horrible floods. I want you to see, can you understand what he says at the beginning of this comment to the people who've been through the floods?
And I promise you, the bad news for you is I'm coming back because I want to see it. Thank you very much.
Do you understand that?
No, sir.
Neither did those folks. You can almost look on their faces and see them like, what did he just say? What did he say? Nobody knows. Anyway, that's our president, and he is in full form this week. We go to the White House press room because Karine Jean-Pierre, who is the White House press secretary, gets a question, I believe, from Peter Doocy of Fox News, who is asking her about this new army of IRS agents who are going to be hired. Watch.
Who around here decided that Americans were crying out for more interaction with the IRS?
I don't understand your question. You have to say more.
Of course you don't understand the question because it's really simple, and that'd be hard for you to understand. But Karine, he simply asked, how many Americans are saying, boy, we really want some more IRS agents out there? That's just what we need. 87,000. You know, it's the best way I saw someone put it, they took a picture of Razorback Stadium, obviously, because it's near and dear to my heart. And it showed a full stadium, which is around 78,000 people. And they said, look at this crowd. And the government wants to hire more people to be IRS agents than can fit into this stadium to come after you. And here's the sad news if you are a taxpayer, and I hope you are, because if you're not, then they ought to come after you. But here's the thing they keep trying to tell you. Oh no, this is about going after the rich people, so they pay their fair share. We're not going to go after people down at the bottom. I promise you they are. And let me explain why. It's not complicated. People who make millions or billions of dollars that they're always harping about how they're going to go after them. To begin with, they have a whole building full of accountants and attorneys who prepare their tax returns, so they don't get audited. And they're very careful about them. And unlike what people think, people who make that much money, they don't cheat on their taxes. And there's a simple reason why. Because they can't afford to lose all of their business over a tax issue. I'm not saying rich people don't sometimes cheat, but for the most part, especially big companies, they don't cheat. Now, what they do is they look for every tax law that favors them. And can I please remind you, there's a big difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion. Tax avoidance is when you use every legal means to only pay the taxes that you owe, and you avoid the taxes that you don't have to pay for whatever reason, because you've expensed out equipment that you've bought, or because you have had certain business deductions, or you can take your losses in a certain area. That's tax avoidance, and you're stupid not to do it. Tax evasion, that's a crime. And that's where you know what your taxes should be, but you lie, and you don't tell what your income was or what your expenses were. That's called tax evasion. That's criminal. Big companies and very, very high net worth people rarely engage in tax evasion. And if they ever get audited, That same room full or building full of attorneys and accountants that prepared their taxes, they're the ones who go through the audit, not the person who's the CEO of the company and not the person who is the billionaire. So who are the IRS agents going to go after? Who is it they're going to get the money out of that they claim they're going to get? They're going to get it after the guy who's the self-employed Uber driver, to the person who delivers pizza. They're going to go after the person who is a self-employed plumber and has one truck, and he takes his own calls and he goes out and unplugs your toilet. It's the people in the gig economy. It's the people who don't have the luxury of a bunch of lawyers and accountants who can do this stuff for them. That's who's going to get audited. And for the most part, the IRS will call and say, look, we found some discrepancies. They're not going to criminally charge them. They're just going to say, if you pay another $400, we'll just write this off. So $400 is cheaper than hiring an accountant at $500 an hour or an attorney at $700 an hour and going through it. That's where the money's going to come from. So when they say, we're not going after, middle-class people, yes, they are. And if you truly believe they're coming after somebody differently, then I can't help you. That's all I'm going to tell you. I can't help you. Just sad. Okay, we getting some questions in?
Absolutely, we are this afternoon. Shopper Dog, first to write in today. Gov, why are we negotiating to do a prisoner swap with Russia when we have political prisoners being unjustly held right here in D.C.?
Great question, and I couldn't agree more with the nature of the question. We've got people who have been sitting in a prison in Washington since January of 2021, and many of them have yet to go to trial. They're supposed to have a speedy trial provision in the Constitution. Many of them really have never been given a clear answer as to what their penalties are. Some have been held, and then they'll have ultimately a plea bargain down to a misdemeanor. They let them go, but they've been rotting in a jail all this time. So yeah, we got political prisoners. Here's the other thing. I know his question has to do with, should we negotiate to let Brittany Griner out of prison in Russia and give up a murderer for somebody who took some illegal marijuana extract into Russia? And the answer is, I hate that she's gotten a 9.5-year sentence. That's ridiculous. It's an overkill. But Kamala Harris is the Attorney General of California, put a whole bunch of people, several thousand, in California prisons for possession of marijuana. Mm-hmm. So you might want to ask Kamala Harris, hey, before you get Brittany out, you might want to go back to your home state and open the prison doors of some of the people that you put in there for several years for possession of marijuana. And that's the U.S. of A. And by the way, Brittany Griner hates America. She's the one that wouldn't come out and even listen to the national anthem. And she said she not only wouldn't stand for it, she wouldn't come out of the locker room. Good news for Brittany Griner. I know she's faced with all this bad news, but here's some good news. For the next 9.5 years, she will not have to listen to the national anthem of the United States while she's in a Russian prison. So she gets her wish. All right.
All right. I see Dawn writing today, Gov, did Biden pay his back taxes, his fair share, or the 10% to the big guy?
Good question. I'm not his accountant, so I can't completely answer that. But I know that there was an income of about like $16 million between the time he left the vice president's office and the time that he was elected president, which is a nice boatload of dough for somebody without a job. And I would love to know, and I'm sure you would too, how much of that was the skim off of Hunter Biden's shady business deals with the Chinese communists and with the Russians. Because reportedly, based on the actual text of documents that were obtained from Hunter Biden's laptop, 10% of all the business went to the big guy. Who's the big guy? Well, in those documents, it was revealed that was good old Joe. So we'll never maybe know. I'll give you one more and then we'll go to the video.
Jay Brindley is asking today, good afternoon, Gov. I have some dear friends in Zimbabwe, and sadly, with the latest trick that Biden has pulled, he's starting to remind me of the late dictator, Robert Mugabe.
Wow. That's a nasty comparison, isn't it?
It is.
Yikes. I think I'll just leave that
Leave
one
that sit there
Leave that
today?
one on the floor right there. Just not going to touch it. But here's what I will touch right after I tell you that we need you to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Leave us a comment, a like, and a share. All that stuff is very important to us, so please do it. But I hope you were listening to Nancy Pelosi this week. She brought up something, and you know, I got to be honest, when she said this, I remembered hearing the same thing when I was a little kid.
Oh, yeah.
About if you kept digging a hole in your backyard, you'd eventually get to China. I tried. I never got so much as a wonton, okay? I just never got that far. But she brings it up, and it's kind of a funny statement. Let's watch.
When I was a little girl, I was told at the beach if I dug a hole deep enough, we would reach China. So we've always felt a connection there.
I was just thinking, Nancy, since you've been in the House, you've been digging a hole. I mean, a really big hole. And it's like you're digging to try to get to China and maybe help you and all the folks on your loony left be able to have a fast track to dump more money to them. Who knows? Maybe that's what this is all about. You heard that when you were a little kid?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And at the beach. And I remember trying.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if they start digging on the other side, we can meet in the middle.
When I was a kid, I never got to go to the beach. I never thought I would see salt water as a kid, but just digging in my backyard, I thought I could get from Hope, Arkansas to
Somewhere.
maybe all the way to Shanghai. Who knew? I never got there. This is one for the books. I'm not sure what she was trying to get across. Obviously, the Chinese were very upset that Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, and they pushed back hard. So she's trying to do some damage control. Kind of blew up in her face like an exploding cigar. Let's watch.
We still support the one China policy. We go there to acknowledge the status quo is what our policy is. There was nothing disruptive about that. It was only about saying China is one of the freest societies in the world. Don't take it from me. That's from Freedom House.
Don't take it from her, because she was about as wrong as she could get. Now, if she's speaking of Taiwan, Taiwan is one of the freest countries on earth. But China, mainland China, the so-called People's Republic of China, is one of the least free places, 9 points out of 100. It's not a very good grade, is it? Mm-hmm. So yeah, Taiwan, very free, got a lot of freedom there. It's called the Republic of China. But the People's Republic of China, which is communist China, it ain't so free. I've been to both places. I'm going to tell you something. There's a huge difference in the freedom between the two countries. All right, let's see what else we have coming in from our viewers today.
All right, well, you could do a little explanation about our live stream today. Joshua Montgomery is writing, is this, referring to our live stream today, the same that's on TV, the same show?
No, not even close. Our show is a fun variety show with a live studio audience of several hundred people. It is a rock and rollin' adventure from the beginning to the end. We have live music. We have sometimes comedians, magicians, a lot of wonderful music. We have interesting and entertaining guests. It is like an old-fashioned variety show that if you're my age or around, you will have remembered growing up on it. I like to say we have just enough politics to keep it current and interesting, but we don't load it with so much politics that you're going to blow your blood pressure right through your head, because we want it to be a show that you can put your feet up, relax, be informed, but also be inspired and entertained. So that's our goal, and I think we hit it almost every week, if not every week. Must be doing something right. We're into our 5th season.
Yeah, we have fun too.
We do. The live stream is just Pam and me sitting here in the theater. There is no audience. It's just us talking directly to you and letting you participate. and it's a true dialogue. So speaking of dialogue, let's see what our viewers are
All
thinking.
right. Well, our viewers are, in fact, over 500 of them participating in our question today.
Good.
You asked the question, was a raid on Trump's home an act of even-handed justice as touted by AG Merrick Garland? 89% say no, yes, 10%. Governor is, like I said, over 500 voting with us this afternoon. It's a good group.
I think a great way to look at that, I watched his news conference yesterday. Honestly, I was dumbstruck that he said, oh, we apply justice evenly and without favor. Those were his exact words, and I'm thinking, really? Okay, let me get this right. Hillary Clinton lost or vanished with or erased 35,000 emails, many of which were classified, on her private server that is illegal to even have. You cannot have government documents, especially classified documents, on a private server, all of which she had the server in her bathroom. Lost 35,000 emails. Nobody raided her home. Nobody went to Chappaqua, New York and burst in. Maybe they were afraid to find Bill and who knows who. But the point is, there was no raid on her house. There was no charges filed. There was no big stink, no subpoena issued, none. Sandy Berger, who worked for the Clintons, he had been the national security advisor. He went to the National Archives. This was after they were out of office. And he got documents and he stuffed them in his pants, underwear, and in his socks, and he walked out with them because there were certain things related to the 9/11 Commission that I didn't guess he wanted people to see. And he got caught, and at first he said it was just an accident, he didn't mean to take them. Come on. I just accidentally stuffed this stuff in my underwear because, you know, that's what I do. And when that didn't play out to work, he finally admitted, yeah, I shouldn't have done it. It was just a mistake, and I'm sorry. And they gave him a misdemeanor. But nobody raided his home. Nobody went and put guns on his property. The only time we see that is when it's a conservative. We saw it with Roger Stone, 6 a.m. They show up at his house. They pull him out on his yard when he's in pajamas. His wife, who is deaf, is scared to death. She can't hear what's happening. She just knows that all these men with automatic weapons are frog marching them out on their front lawn while CNN, who just happened to be there, is taping it all. Peter Navarro, who was on our show just a few weeks ago, on his way to this show the first time he was scheduled, he gets accosted at the airplane door at Reagan Airport. They haul him off in handcuffs. They strip search him. They put him in leg irons, and all because he didn't show up in person to Congress and say nasty things about President Trump. So you could go Steve Bannon, same thing. The only people who get this kind of treatment are Republicans and conservatives are Trump supporters.
Well, and never with a former president.
My gosh, no.
Either side.
This has never happened, ever.
Right.
Barack Obama left the White House with several million documents. Nobody's raided his Chicago home or his beachside property in Massachusetts. Nobody's gone there with guns and 30 agents to demand anything. And President Trump was cooperating with them when they were saying, look, there's some documents that we think should go to the National Archives instead of in your possession. Okay. People don't understand that when you leave office, and on a much smaller scale, when I left office in Arkansas, there is so much going on to get your stuff boxed and sent to where your official papers are going to be. And there's a flurry of activity. You're trying to make the transition to the next administration. Is it possible that things get misplaced? Of course it is. If you later find out, oh, this should have stayed, okay, you send it back. But it's really nuts to think that this was of such urgency that it required 30 FBI agents with guns drawn at 6 o'clock in the morning at a man's home. It just doesn't make sense. Now, let's watch this video because this is Garland, Merrick Garland, Attorney General, saying that he personally did, in fact, approve the raid. Now, he waits 72 hours to say anything about it. But finally, the controversy is such he can't ignore it anymore. Here's what he says.
Federal law, long-standing department rules, and our ethical obligations prevent me from providing further details as to the basis of the search at this time. There are, however, certain points I want you to know. First, I personally approve the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the Department does not take such a decision lightly.
Sure you didn't take it lightly. Can I give you a little hint? Mr. Attorney General, we don't take it lightly either. You raided the home of a former president for some pieces of paper. You could have called his attorneys and said, here's what we need, here's what we want to see. In addition to that, there were reports that they didn't just go through papers, they went through Melania's wardrobe.
Right.
Now, maybe they had some transgender agents who wanted to try on her clothes. I don't know. Why do you go through, was this a search or was it a panty raid? You know, I can't imagine. What the heck is that about?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I mean, I'm just appalled. I haven't been this angry in a long time watching the government. And then the self-righteous tone that Merrick Garland took when he said, now there are some who are criticizing the wonderful people of the FBI. Can I just tell you something? Here's why we're criticizing the wonderful people of the FBI. Yeah, there's some great agents out there in the rank and file, but you've shown us at the highest levels of the FBI and the DOJ that you're corrupt. James Comey took classified information when he was FBI director, took it from the Bureau and gave it to the New York Times. Nobody raided his home, nobody. And he was the director of the FBI. Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and the whole cadre of FBI and Department of Justice officials lied. They lied on a FISA warrant in order to go after associates of Donald Trump, and they never got in trouble for it. Nobody got fired. Some people resigned. Nobody had their home raided. And these were people who worked in law enforcement, and they lied to a judge to get a warrant to go after a sitting president. So yeah, we're pretty ticked off, and please don't lecture me about how I'm not supposed to question the FBI for doing stuff like that. And you claim there was even-handed justice. You prove, sir, that there most certainly was not. Sadly, the media, they think they've got it all figured out. I want to play this clip. This is a guy on the streets of New York talking about a guy who sticks both feet in his mouth and can't seem to get them out. He's talking about how criminal Donald Trump is. And of course, he knows. Watch.
Is this unprecedented to arrest a former president for not turning in documents?
A former president that had committed this many provable criminal acts.
But what are the provable criminal acts, I guess?
Provable criminal acts. Well, I'm done talking.
Of course you're done talking, because you've already said more than you knew, you empty-headed idiot. My gosh, that's amazing.
He should have just said, I don't believe I can speak to that.
Yeah.
He'd have been safer. He'd have been safer.
Merrick Garland says.
I know.
We have time for a couple of questions or so. Let's get as many as we can before we have to go.
Okay. Angela Gillette is asking, good afternoon, Mike. My question is there any moderate Democrats upset over what happened to President Trump and Biden's new Green Deal that has hurt us even more financially?
Well, if there are Democrats who are upset, they're keeping it to themselves. And I think there probably are some that are upset. I'll give you one example. Interestingly, of all people, Andrew Cuomo, former governor of New York, was one of the first ones who did say that they better have something of great consequence, or otherwise they're going to look stupid and it's going to blow up in their face. Tulsi Gabbard, another Democrat, has also spoken out. But as far as any of them that are currently in office, haven't heard a one. And I think it's because they're scared to say what they think.
Okay, Diana Rogue is asking, I'm concerned about these Dominion voting machines. Are they still being used?
Far as I know, they are being used in a number of locations. And honestly, I cannot speak to how good or how bad they are. I just simply don't know.
I'll tell you somebody that will be able to, though, I believe, is Mac Warner this weekend.
Yep.
Because he has spoken many times on cybersecurity out and about. So maybe we'll just ask him that question while he's here with us.
What a great time to have him here. Mac Warner, who is the Secretary of State of West Virginia, He will be with us this week, and we will ask him that question. So one more good reason to watch the show. Be sure to leave your questions in the comments section. I hope, if you haven't already, that you will subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll let you know when we will be back for another live stream. Thanks for joining us. We're so very happy to have you, and right now we want to remind you what we have on the show coming up this week right here on TBN.
This week on Huckabee, Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki, the stand-up comedy of Nazareth, Secretary Mac Warner on the midterm landscape, blast off to our kind of town, Huntsville, Alabama, television star Kathy Lee Gifford, and a 1960s favorite by the Music City Connection. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central, and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central, right here on TBN.